Welcome back to Friday Financial, and today we are joined by Stephanie Goldberg-Mauro, who is the owner and founder of College Planning 101. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me, Mary Claire. It's so nice to be here.
Yes, we're really excited to talk about it. And I know we were just kind of discussing there's a lot to cover when it comes to preparing for college for both the students and the parents and guardians. But let's kind of really focus in on those folks who are going through it for the first time. So start with, if you don't mind, when do we begin, right? Parents and guardians who are going through this for the first time, when should they really start thinking about this?
The best time to start planning is the end of 10th grade in high school, because over the summertime, we'll do a career assessment and we'll develop their college list and we'll go over their financials. So we do that simultaneously, because admissions and financial aid go together like a puzzle. So if we have the right admissions, the right academic fit, then we want to also find the right financial fit. And sometimes it takes time for parents to really understand what that looks like. And so we use the summer between sophomore and junior year of high school to get all that together. And then that allows us to have a full year to do planning for testing financially and research, which is really important for students to figure out what college is right for them.
Right. So if someone's watching this and their child's already in their junior year and they're panicking right now, I'm going to assume that it's not too late to reach out to you or to start going through the process, if they're a junior.
Absolutely. Like I said, the best time to plan, but the most people who hire me are in their junior year, or now their juniors are, finishing up junior year, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, we haven't done anything. Yeah. So, I have had people who in their senior year hire me in September and October, and we get them wrapped up, but it is like fast. Right. So it's just nice to start earlier. The earlier, the better. So even if a junior, now in June of their junior year is starting, it's still good because we still have some time to plan.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what exactly is the first step? I know you mentioned that you kind of start with the career and their thoughts around that. But from a parental perspective, particularly when we're talking about the financial aspect, what is the first step? What does that look like?
Well, when your students are young, obviously saving for college is important, but of course, that if you got to save for your retirement first. So the first step is to save as much as possible when your students are young. But if your student is a sophomore or a junior and you've lived in New York and your student's in a sport or two, there's not a lot left over for a lot of families to save for college. So the first step really is understanding what your expected family contribution is and what you can afford. So this way your student isn't looking at colleges that at the end of the day you're like, oh wait, this is going to cost us $50,000. Oh, we can't afford that. Mm-hmm. So when I was talking earlier about academics and financials, what we do for the financial aspect is we create a report that shows the family what their expected family contribution is, which is the minimum a family is expected to pay for college based on their income and non-retirement assets. And then we give them that number and we say, okay, you're expected to pay $30,000 or you're expected to pay $80,000. Mm-hmm. So then we know, well, these and our systems allow us to really help families with this because we have all this data. So when we're developing their college list, we're knocking off colleges that are too expensive. Mm-hmm. So our students don't even fall in love with colleges that are outside of their financial reach. And we're always creating the academic fit because colleges admit by GPA. Mm-hmm. You can have 1,500 SAT score, but if you have an 85 average, you're not getting into Syracuse or Northeastern or any of the Ivies because the mm-hmm. GPA is really what defines a student. So we really want to make sure that that academic fit is there because the academic fit also brings in a lot of the free money because if they don't want the student, you're not going to get merit money. If they don't want the student, you're not going to get need-based money. Mm-hmm. And a lot of myths that I sit across from families is that, well, we know we qualify for need-based aid, so we'll just get it. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Colleges do not have to provide need-based aid. However, the Ivies do only provide need-based aid. They don't provide merit money. So if you're having a high expected family contribution and you're expected to pay $80,000 a year, then you're not going to get any money from the Ivies. Conversely, if you're expected to pay $30,000 a year, you will an Ivy will bridge the gap if your student gets in. So if your student is Ivy quality, I say definitely try if you know you can afford it.
Right. And that goes back to what you're saying about starting early, because this kind of all needs to get ironed out sooner rather than later, I would think.
Absolutely. Like, the sooner you start saving for college, $50 a month, when your baby is born, that can go a long way. And then we have market conditions like right now, where families are losing a lot in their 529s because of market conditions and the environment that we're in. So, plan B is, what if we don't have enough money? What is plan B? And with my clients, if any student decides to go to a community college after going through the process with us, I don't charge any extra, and I just keep them with me, and I help them transfer to the next college, because sometimes at the end of the day, it's not affordable. And, and then the family is like, okay, the student doesn't want to go to the state school. Well, if you don't want to go to the state school and everything else is expensive, then, a community college may be your only best bet. And then you can transfer to that private school that you wanted to go to. So, there's other ways around it that can be very cost effective.
Right. And those are probably, I would think there's probably some hard conversations in there through that process. Again, supporting you saying that start early. So those expectations do start early.
Absolutely. And set the expectations with your students. I always say to parents, don't feel guilty. You cannot afford college. It's not your fault. You've done nothing wrong. It has outpaced our raises, our investment performance. It has outpaced so many economic conditions that you can't feel guilty for not having enough money saved, especially if you went on vacation and occasionally went out to dinner and had fun with your family. We have to have that balance in our lives. And then, guilt. Guilt and ego are two very expensive emotions in this process. And the fact of, we'll figure it out later. Well, figuring it out later means that could be $1,500 to $2,500 a month student loan payments. And that's scary, especially when a student's graduating with a history degree and doesn't have a direction, or has another 2 years to go for master's. So we want to do our undergrad as cost effective as possible for every major, especially for those who need to go on to grad school.
Right. So first step is that savings piece. Really start building the savings and have very realistic conversations about what's affordable. What comes after that? If you're looking ahead and that's kind of been ironed out, what's next? I know everybody, right? When you were talking about college financing, everybody talks about the FAFSA. So where does that come into play? Is that in that initial stage, or is that next?
So what happens is the October 1st is when the FAFSA opens. It's not due that day, it opens up, okay? It's available. And then every college that your student applies to has their own deadline. We always try to get our financial aid forms done by November 1st through December 1st. So this way we make sure we hit all of the early action or early decision deadlines and any other deadlines that may be there. And we like to be ahead of deadlines. So when you're filing the FAFSA, your student is actually beginning of senior year in high school, and you're filing for the following year, right? So now we're in 2022. Our students for 2023, we're going to file this October, November, December, and then it's going to be for the following year. So you're doing that. In my process, that's actually the last piece we do, right? So we do the career assessment. We develop the college list. They use our software to give them the edge and competitiveness in the process, affordability. And then over the summer, we start applications and essays. And then after October 1st, our students know who they're applying to, have all their essays done, and then we file the financial aid forms. So it's actually the last part. But before you get to that point, there's so much work to be done to make sure that they're applying to the right colleges academically, financially, and then socially.
So what about, if these parents and these kids are in the situation and they're thinking, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I don't have a career. I don't know what I want to do. How do parents walk through that?
So the first thing we do is career assessment with every one of our students. Even if they know what they want to do, it's nice to get a confirmation and then broaden their peripheral vision on what else is out there for them. And for those who don't know what they want to do, sometimes they walk away from that program saying, I just confirmed I don't know what I want to do. And that's fine, because you can go into college undecided. So with no direction, so to say, you know what? Undecided is a direction. They're just not ready to make that decision, and that's okay. And what we want to do here is we want to take the pressure off of our students to have to make that decision. And then other students are like, I really like engineering, but I'm thinking of teaching too. Great, let's develop your college list with both those majors. So you can go in, maybe lead under the engineering, and then know that if you change your mind, your second major is there. And so, we want to create options and flexibility throughout the process.
So not a reason to delay starting this process.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And again, that's the first thing we do with a student is career assessment. And then some families like, well, we'll sign up after we have the SAT scores. It's like, but my software is going to show you exactly what SAT scores you need to be competitive. So don't worry about that either, or ACT for that matter. So our software really gives the family an edge in this whole process, both financially and academically.
Okay, excellent. So really the start at the end of your sophomore year, before you start your junior year, figure out, go through the career assessment, start saving money, have those conversations about what's realistic financially. What else? Is there anything else in there, or is that like kind of the good stepping or starting blocks for somebody going through this for the first time?
Those are great starting blocks. And again, being ahead of the process it reduces the stress. For example, last year, in the past 3 years, all of my students have had their Common App and their main essay completed before they went back to high school. So now they get into high school and that's check marks off their list. That's done. And then they can focus on a couple more visits, focus on getting their senior year together and doing well there, because senior year counts, So, being ahead of the deadlines is important, and doing early action, which is non-binding. You just get your applications in early. Or if it's your number one college and you can afford it and they offer early decision, then do early decision. But those are usually 10-15 or 11-1 deadlines. So I have a couple of kids this year. We've got to have all of their applications and essays done by October. And I have 3 of them already working on their essays because we want to get ahead of that, right? So being ahead of those deadlines helps get more merit and or need-based money, because when you apply early, the coffers are full, right? When you apply in January, we have until January. Yeah, okay, but if you want to have some more money, this is the earlier the better. The early bird gets the worm, right? And then the other thing is making sure that, the students over the summer and, prior to this are doing their volunteering and getting involved. Those are all important things, because with test optional, if the student doesn't have a good enough SAT or ACT score to submit test optional, they always look at the whole student, but now those things weigh more because they don't have scores to give, that other feather in their cap. And I had 3 students come to me and say, I'm not doing, they're all test optional now. I'm not doing it. Like, well, test optional is another feather in your cap. So if you don't get a good enough score, then we can go in test optional. But if you do get a good enough score or a great score, that's another $5,000 or $10,000 of merit money. And last year I saw it, and the year before, where we did test optional, and one student didn't have good enough scores and one student did have great scores, and the student got $10,000 test optionally, and the student with the scores got $15,000 in merit money. Okay. So, yes, you're going to get absolutely, your GPA may get you merit money, but if you have the right SAT scores, you're going to get more. So I encourage our students and our parents to encourage their students to do those testings, because they can help make college affordable.
Right. All right. One last question, Stephanie, and then I'll let you go. There are certainly parents and guardians who are simply saying, there's no way I can afford this college for you. I'm sorry. What piece of advice do you have for those individuals?
2 years at community college that tracks to a state school. That's the most cost-effective way to go to college. The problem is the students don't want to go to Dutchess, or they don't want to go to community college. They feel like it's, 13th and 14th grade instead of, freshman and sophomore year of college. But to those kids that come out of school with $1,500 a month student loan payments because they didn't want to do that, they wish they did. Really, and I've had students who didn't work with me say, "Oh my God, I wish I worked with you. You would have talked me out of, $150,000 of debt." So
Right.
again, that's the ego running the process, that's the guilt running the process. Oh, they work so hard to get into that college. And I sit across my client, I say, so they work so hard to be $200,000 in debt? The mom's like, oh, that's why I hired you, huh? Like, yeah. I'm the voice of reason, and they are hard conversations. I'm used to having them. I've been doing it for 12 years, and I know that tears in my office today are saving tens of thousands of dollars in their future. And I've said to students, what, you only want to be happy for 4 years? And the student looked at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're going to come out of college with $230,000 of debt. Let's just say that's a $2,000 a month student loan payment. And you're not going to be happy when you're 21. You're going to be happy for 4 years, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then with the interest rate environment now, forget it. I mean, 3/4 of a basis point yesterday, and the market's tanking. These private student loans are very, very expensive when it comes to interest rates because they're unsecured debt. So the bank has no collateral to say, well, we can lower the interest rates, less of a risk for us. No, it's a total risk. Total risk. So the interest rates are just through the roof on private student loans.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was all great insight for people who are going to be going through this process for the first time. It can be very nerve-wracking, I know. And hopefully we'll have you back on for a future episode.
I would love to come back. Thank you so much, Mary Claire.
You're welcome. And again, Stephanie is the owner and founder of College Planning 101. We will link her website in the description for this video. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.